Welcome to Our.Love podcast, where we share insights from top scientists and relationship experts on all things about love that are out of the box, refreshing, and new. Now sit back, grab a cold drink or hot one if you prefer, and enjoy today's episode.
Hello, friends. Welcome to Our.Love podcast. This is Lei Wan, your host. Today, I'm here with Todd Loznitzky, the founder and CEO of Our.Love. Todd will be interviewing today's guest, who is a bold and purpose-driven entrepreneur, an advocate for women and families, and more. Before I introduce our guest formally, I would like to thank the sponsors of today's episode. This episode is brought to you by Our.Love company. If you want to build a strong, long-lasting relationship with your significant other and explore new, exciting ways to engage each other, download Our.Love app today. It is free. Go to www.our.love and sign up for the latest insights on all topics related to relationships and love, as well as access to our app. It's free. Now, welcome our amazing guest today, Tonya Coppin Fox. Tonya Coppin Fox came to the U.S. at the age of 5 from Barbados, West Indies. Raised on the values of education and entrepreneurship by a grandmother who was herself a skilled businesswoman, Tonya received multiple advanced degrees before launching a successful career as a leader called to fix distressed human services companies. Her latest startup, Global R&S, of which she remains CEO, is a multi-million-dollar company with hundreds of employees. Global provides life resources, therapy, and support to individuals with disabilities in Maryland, Virginia, Washington, D.C., Nevada, and Barbados. Today, Tonya says she co-founded Our.Love company because its mission aligned perfectly with her purpose and passion. And we'll find out more of what she means by that in this episode. Hal, take it away.
Thank you so much, Lei, and thank you and welcome to my good friend and partner, Tonya Coppin Fox, the first person that I went to when I made the decision to go forward and start this company. And I'm really, really excited to interview you and give people an opportunity to get in that busy and very bright head of yours. So let's get started. Tonya, I've known you a fairly long time. We met about a decade ago through our mutual connection, which is your husband, who was a senior executive for me at a prior startup that I ran. I am always amazed at your endless energy, your passion, and how much you've accomplished. You do so much. My first question to you is, how do you manage to do all of that? And what role would you say Harold, your husband, plays in support of your ability to do so much?
I don't know where to start. I just think that you have one life to live. You don't get do-overs. So while you're here, you have to make the best impact you can while you're on Earth. And my husband supports that. You can't do it alone. People look and they say, how are you successful? How do you do this? You got to have a strong support team. So he's there when I'm having my breakdowns and when, I need someone to, run here, run there, pick up supplies, do whatever. He does it all, and he supports me in all of my fabulous harebrained schemes. So
there's plenty. I
have to give him a lot of credit.
Tonya is literally sitting in her bar in Barbados. Among her ventures is a very successful bar, which she just had to relaunch because of the storm that knocked it offline. So I know you guys are just about to get back in business.
Yeah.
Tonya, you know what? I want to start. I want to focus our podcast and this episode and all our episodes on the topic of love and how to love more and better. The purpose of Our.Love, this company that we started, is to give people the opportunity to experience their best love. So let's start with this question. What do you think is the relationship between loving yourself more and better and being able to love your partner more and better?
You know, I know it's cliche when people say you can't love anyone if you don't love yourself, but you really need to start there. I mean, if you don't know what you like, what you dislike, if you don't know who you are, what makes you tick, it's going to be very hard to go into a relationship with someone else. It's going to be hard to go in and empathize with that person if you don't first have an understanding of yourself. And I'm going to be very open. I told you I would be, so I'm just going to be open. This is my second marriage, and one of the things in my first marriage, I lost myself. And when there was a transition, there was a period of time where I said I wasn't going to date anyone. All I was going to do was date myself. So I was the crazy lady sitting at the restaurant by myself, or in the movie theater when the movies were open by myself. I actually dated myself for a couple of months. I wanted to hear my inner thoughts. I wanted to learn to trust my inner thoughts. And out of nowhere, I wasn't expecting it. Who comes through the door? My husband. And what I said was, Lord, when it is time, send me the right person. And he didn't come packaged how I thought he was supposed to come packaged, because, you know, we have these ideas in our head of how, you know, the perfect man is supposed to come, you know, and he wasn't packaged like that. And he'll tell you the story where originally our date week was just basically, and I said this to him, I said, you know what, I only want to see you one day a week. It was Thursdays was our day. You know, we can hang out on Thursdays, do whatever, but for the rest of the week, you go do your thing, I go do my thing, and Thursdays will be our day. And from that, that's how we, you know, actually one Thursday, he wasn't consistent. And when he wasn't consistent, I broke it off with him. And he was like, you know what? Forget it. We're going to see each other every day of the week. And that's how we ended up getting into a more committed relationship. But you have to kind of know yourself. It starts with kind of setting those boundaries, knowing what you want, knowing what you're gonna, you know, what's gonna make you happy, what's gonna fulfill you. And if you don't know that, it's very hard to have another person enter into your space if you're not very clear about that.
So you were talking about boundaries, and it made me wonder, what advice would you give to someone who is in a relationship, if they are committed to that relationship, but they need a reset, right? Maybe they have lost themselves in a relationship, or they don't feel that they're necessarily being their best self or their most authentic self. What would you suggest to someone who's in that boat about what could be a first step towards, you know, essentially finding themselves in the course of strengthening their love?
So I think the first thing you have to do is you have to come out of the mundane day-to-day stuff. We, as couples, we are doing the basic stuff. We're paying bills, we're taking care of kids, we're, you know, who's picking up the laundry, who's doing the grocery, we're doing that stuff. That I mean, those are just the charter of the day. But does that really make, you know, helps your partner to really connect with you? I don't think so. So the first thing I would say is you have to find space for you and your partner. Quiet time, intimate time, time where you guys can reconnect and reset. And during those times, that's when you can start to have some honest dialogue. You can have honest dialogue about the relationship, about the things that you like about the relationship and the things that, you know, you would like to see improve. But you can't do that if there is not a level of connectivity first, right? So people want to have these relationships in the midst of doing all the day-to-day stuff. That's not going to work. It's because, you know, it's like I'm over here trying to get the kids to, you know, soccer practice, and you want to talk to me about our relationship. It never goes over well. So I think when you create this space for you and your partner, then you can start to open up those dialogues and your partner can hear what you're saying, because when we're doing all these other things, it's hard to hear. There's too much chatter going on in the background. So create that space, have honest conversation. Yeah.
Go to the point you made, though. You started off by, you know, when you were trying to reestablish who you were, you realized that, you know, you said you called it dating yourself, which I think is actually fabulous. How can someone who's not sure that you know, they themselves are as clear about what makes them happy, you know, before you can have that conversation with your partner, does it help to have that conversation with yourself? And how would you suggest someone does that? What's the best way to speak to yourself and ask yourself the hard questions about, well, who am I and what is it that I'm looking for out of love?
I think the best way first, and it may seem very simple and practical, is actually to go stand in a doggone mirror. Sometimes you just got to go stand in the mirror and talk to the girl or the guy in the mirror. Okay, you don't have any audience, you don't have anyone around. You just have to say, look, okay, this is not working. I've been in multiple relationships, or I'm in a relationship. It's not. What does Tonya need? What does Tal need? And you have to have that honest, raw conversation. You got to keep having it, right? Because what we know is the more you talk, the more you say it to yourself, the more you're committing it to yourself, right? So it starts there. And then you start to build out, what are those boundaries? What are those things that I need? And then you can start to have other people enter into your space. But you just got to be honest. You know, I talk to you about this all the time. I talk to myself. I may look like a crazy person, and maybe I am, I don't know. But I have real conversations with myself. And sometimes even when I did something that I knew I shouldn't have done, I will say, Tonya, you know better. You should not have done that. So it's just about being your authentic, raw self when no one is looking. Go stand in the mirror, go have those hard conversations.
I love it. I love it. And that ties actually to my next question, which is about the role of total respect, right? You and I have talked about total respect and what an important component of successful love and relationships that is. Tell me, what do you think? You know, what does total respect mean to you? And why do you think that's so important to make a relationship successful? So maybe, what is your definition of total respect? Let's start there. How would you define total respect between two people who are in a relationship and are romantically, you know, they're supposed to be the best friend, the romantic partner? What is total respect? What does it look like?
Total respect for me is when it is almost gut-wrenching painful to see the other person in pain. And let's unpack that, because it's hurt you to see that other person in pain. So if it hurts you, you know you're not going to say something derogatory. You know you're not going to exploit that person's inner feelings or the things that person has shared with you in those intimate moments. You know, even in the midst of anger, you'll rather turn away and say, I won't say anything in this moment, in this time, because what I might say, my words may not come out the way that I will. You have that presence of mind and that thought process, because you want to make sure that when this period of whatever the issue may be in this moment, it's over, you still have your friend, you still have your partner. And if you say or do things that hurts that relationship, that's going to have a lifelong effect. So it hurts you as much as it hurts it. You know, it just hurts you to hurt that person.
You know, it's interesting. I've been thinking a lot about total respect in the context of love, and I really think fundamentally that is the most important thing in a relationship, because total respect, it's exact. You and I share, I think, most of the same views on that. It is about seeing yourself in your partner and knowing not to take any conflict to a place where you're violating that total respect in a way that will leave residue. No matter what, you know, people will move on, but the impact of saying something that's out of total respect, it will leave a mark, and it will damage the relationship. And in many cases, you're setting yourself up for failure. You're guaranteeing yourself that you're going to face significant challenges if you're not in total respect. But tell me, a lot of the times you may be in total respect, or you may view the significance of total respect. I think in some relationships, it is not a shared view, right? There is this, I think, highly, highly misguided sense that in my personal relationship, I can so-called drop, the pretension. And if I feel like yelling, I can yell. If I feel like saying something hurtful, well, I'm in a relationship, I should be myself. Why is that not, in your view, acceptable? Why is it that people should view the place of, their love as requiring the highest level of respect, not the lowest, and that it is important to factor in safety, maintaining safety for you and your partner? Why is that so critical in a relationship?
Because the person in front of you is a human that has feelings, a human that has a past, and then that past may have trauma, a human that can be feeling the pressures of the day-to-day. And if you're not mindful that that person is in front of you may not be able to reset after something that was said, I think that you have to be just acutely aware that, that is not a robot. So if you say something and it's hurtful, it could trigger past experiences, it could trigger past traumas. And I think of it this way, if you get a paper cut, okay, it hurts, it's painful, whatever, and it might recover over time. But if you keep getting a paper cut on the same spot over and over and over again, after a while, the healing process is going to take longer and longer and longer and longer and longer. And it's the same thing in relationships. If you keep poking and you keep throwing fuel and you keep doing things that's harmful to the other person, the first time, yes, they may reset, but after a while, it starts to become the standard, and it's going to take longer and longer for that person to heal. And not only that, it's going to wear away the fabric of the trust. And to me, trust and respect come hand in hand.
Sure. So I know you're writing a blog post or have written a blog post, and you talked about breathing as a method of in the context of conflict. Breathing can play a very important role in keeping us in total respect. What suggestion would you make to someone who maybe they or their partner have a tendency to lose sight of total respect when they face conflict? How can breathing help people, center themselves and, if you will, get a hold of themselves before they do damage?
Breathing to me is a process that helps you to reset. So even when you are in a situation that could be problematic, taking a breath, taking a moment to think as you release, okay, you're releasing that negative energy, right? And as you inhale, you are asking the universe, right, to bring back in the positivity so you can kind of reset. And that breathing is so very fundamental. A lot of in everything that we do, breathing is a base and it's a starting place. It helps us to kind of put things in perspective. Because if you're just going full throttle and you're not breathing, what happens after a while? You could implode and get to a place where your blood pressure goes up. You're saying things that you don't really mean. So taking a moment to kind of inhale and exhale helps us to kind of reset and say, okay, let me put this into perspective. My partner said this, or is this really what they meant? How do I get my partner to understand? And you can't do that. Levels are all high and you guys are kind of up here. You can get it if one person kind of takes a step back, takes a deep breath and say, now, honey, I know you said that, but I don't think you really understood how that made me feel. And that's something I do a lot. I mean, my husband and I come from different backgrounds. So oftentimes getting him to understand what may be normal for him is not necessarily normal for me because I come from a different path. So I had to learn to communicate differently, and the breathing helped me to do that. It helped me to say, okay, Tonya, if he's high, you don't get up there too. You take a moment, you breathe, and you help him to understand where you're at, right? And you say to him, hey, and by the way, after almost 10 years, he now does it with me. When I'm high, and yeah, he comes and he says, Tonya, I don't think you understand how this made me feel.
I love that. I love when, here's, and if you want to know that you're making progress as a couple, it's when you are mirroring to each other positive tendencies and positive ways to communicate. So some people view that, unfortunately, as being mocked, right? So if your partner is saying to you, you're doing what you always say you don't like, you can see that as someone waving a red cloth in front of you and trying to get you to get more fired up. But in truth, that is actually a great moment to take a breath because it is oftentimes true. We oftentimes attack from the victim position. We may feel that our partner mistreated us, didn't hear us, and here we go. And because we were attacked, because we feel wrong, we feel that we are entitled to go attack because we were attacked. No, attacking from the victim position is you choosing not to honor whatever it is that you believe are the core values that will make your relationship strong. Don't allow yourself to do that. I think it's a really critical point. So breathing, we talked about breathing. Breathing is, I know that you practice breathing. Why is breathing something you should be mindfully working on, not just in the moment of conflict? What is it about breathing? Because supposedly we breathe all the time, right? We breathe all the time. So why is it that breathing is something you should mindfully practice?
because when you breathe, you come from here, you come from your core, right? And your core is what grounds you, it's what centers you, right? So the energy is flowing from here. And this is where your breath comes from, right? And what that helps to do, it helps to center you and reground you. So you are able to think rationally, kind of, it's kind of the fuel that helps all the other parts of your body function, including your brain. So you're breathing, so your brain doesn't make the mouth say things it's not supposed to say.
For those of you listening to the podcast, I want to encourage you to check out the couples meditation that we're offering at Our.Love, which are about teaching you how to breathe and do it with your partner. And you'd be amazed if you're able to meditate together. It will play a role in conflict resolution. You will be able to address conflict from a different place because you will have that skill of being able to breathe in a way that takes you back to your core, as Tonya said. So Tonya, let's move on. Not to date ourselves, but you and I are not in our 20s anymore. It's probably hard to tell. If you're watching this podcast, you're probably thinking, these are people in their early 20s, and I appreciate that very much. But in all seriousness, what is the biggest positive difference in your mind between love in your 20s and love in your 40s? And how can couples build on that positivity to improve their experience?
Well, first of all, I don't even know who I was in my 20s. I'm going to tell you that right now. I am much more self-aware in my 40s, soon to be in my 50s, than I was in my 20s. But my 40-year-old self understands the journey that 20-year-old person had to go through to get to where she is. And because of it, it has made me more open to love. It has made me more forgiving. It has made me less judgmental. It has made me less full of pride. It has made me, put me in a place where I can say, I'm sorry, I was wrong. And, in 20, you hopped up on a lot of, hormones and, you know everything. You're just getting out the house and you're getting to be an adult. So you know everything. You don't know anything. And I'm sure people in the 60s and the 70s will say people in the 40s don't know anything yet. Understanding that life is a journey, which you sent me something the other day, or actually, I think you posted it on Instagram, and I so wholeheartedly agree. Life is a journey. It is chapters, okay? It's chapters. So you go through the different chapters and you learn something from the chapters before. Pocket it, you take the good. And the things that weren't so good, you learn to understand where their place is and you move on from them. So I would say, I love who I am in my 40s. I'm much more self-aware. I'm much more forgiving of myself. I'm much more honest with myself, which I believe makes me better to love someone else.
That's a great answer. And first, since you mentioned that I posted something on Instagram, please follow Our.Love on Instagram and on Facebook and on LinkedIn. We're going to be posting very interesting things. It's going to be information coming from a wide range of people. Tonya tends to travel among celebrities. Some of them will be joining us and giving us their thoughts. But we intend to share insights about love and making love work and making love better from a wide range of sources. So please follow us. Tonya, talk to me about compromise, right? I mean, we hear that word all the time. It's thrown about, relationships are about compromise. What is compromise? I mean, what isn't compromise, right? I mean, is compromise being willing to do things that you think in your core aren't okay? How do you define compromise?
Yeah, I don't think that compromising anyone should be asking you to do something that's not okay. I don't think that that's compromise. I think compromise in a relationship is having a healthy appreciation for your partner's likes, dislikes, needs, and wants. And you guys being able to say, okay, yeah, I may like Chinese food, but my husband likes Italian. So I'm not going to eat Chinese food every night. I'm going to take into consideration my partner's, preference. And some nights I'll do Chinese and some nights I'll do Italian. And that's compromising. But compromising should never be anything that impacts your moral judgment or, makes you change significantly who you are at your core. And if you, again, that's where that healthy dialogue comes into play, because those are the things you talk about. That goes back to the respect. those are the things you have healthy conversation about. And so, I mean, I think all relationships, you have to compromise. If it's one way all the time, that's a very one-sided relationship.
That's right. And so, I just want to add to that, I think there is a misconception that compromise means that, 50% of the time, one partner gets their way, 50% of the time, someone else gets their way. To me, it's not a mathematical equation. Compromise is about me ensuring that my partner in their relationship with me are able to be who they are, and I respect them and accept them for that, and vice versa. Compromise is not, hey, let's go do something that's completely out of character for you. If I'm asking you to do that, then I'm not acting out of total respect, and that's not going to work. All right, I'm going to shift gears a little bit and talk about relationships with children, and specifically you and your husband both had children from previous marriages. You raised them together. They're incredible. I know your children. They're amazing. Tell me about the challenges of, we actually don't tell me about the challenges of a blended family. We all know what they are. But my question to you is this: what is, in your experience, as a partner of someone who's bringing children into a marriage, what is the best way that you can make a blended family experience positive for your spouse?
So I will take this one from my grandmother here that's still alive in Barbados, my father's mother. Right before my husband and I were getting married, she said to me, never let children divide you. And we went to her house, and if you see the house, it's like this little old, like kind of hut. And she's in there with her husband, and they've been married, oh my God, probably about 60 years. He can't see, but she's still in there doing her thing. And it's just so sweet and loving. And she made this reference. She said, in my house, it is a dictatorship. This is Cuba. This is not a democracy. And I was like, okay. She says, my husband and I, if the kids cannot go to one person and get one answer and then come to the other parent and get another answer, we stuck together. And that's something that my husband and I, we held dear to us, because we've had situations that have arisen with all of our children. And my husband and I has always had to say, we're never going to be divided. So you're not going to come and get one answer from one parent and another answer from another parent, even though we may even disagree with how, what the other parent did. We don't show that to them, and we don't have that. We're not openly saying, hey, I disagree with that. We may have a conversation, behind the scenes, but typically we're very respectful of how each person is parent, and we're respectful of the relationship that each parent has with their child. And I think our kids see that. And as a result, my stepchildren have been very respectful. I love them. Honestly, I do. Even when they're going through their crazy, and I know my kids go through their crazy, and he loves them. And one thing I will say about my husband is he's one of those parents he's there. The parent that you can depend on to always be on time, to pick you up after school, to never miss a beat, to know what's going on. And I can tell you, for my 16-year-old daughter, that gives it exudes confidence and love when you have a parent that's not your biological parent, but will step in and do the world for you. So
on that very point, I think what Harold does very well, and Harold does a lot of things very well. He was a very, very effective general manager for handling hundreds of millions of dollars worth of merchandise for me at a previous startup, and he did it very, very well. So he's very good at multitasking. But one of the things Harold does very well is lead with his heart. He loves your children. How important is it to you that your husband loves his stepchildren, your children? And what advice would you give people that are listening to us who maybe are in a blended family, and sometimes maybe they're not at their best when it comes to supporting their spouse when it comes to their children? How important is it to make your spouse feel that you love their children, and that it is okay for them to love their children, without any fears that would divide you in any way?
I think it's very important. It can almost cripple a relationship when you don't have that level of love, because for me it was very difficult, because again, my children came from my first marriage, which I was in for a long time, and not knowing how Harold would step in and how he would, especially my son who's older, and he he identifies as queer. And, you know, in the Black community, it's still kind of taboo to have, you know, children who, you know, are in same-sex relationships. So, and then, you know, to have my husband who is, you know, again, he's that rough, tuggy, you know, that guy, you know, how would he relate to my son, and will he be able to nurture and love my son and be understanding? And he has. I mean, he treats him with respect. He, you know, anything he needs, you know, he's there for him. And that was very important because it made me love Harold even more. If you can love someone's children, it will make your partner love you even more, because you can always love someone that is of your, you know, biological DNA. It takes so much more to love someone who doesn't share that same DNA as you. And that's why even adoption, you know, I tell children who are adopted, you're special, you're selected, you know, to be born into someone's home and to be loved on, that's a very special thing. So when you have children that are from other relationships, or your partner is bringing children from another relationship, and you love them wholeheartedly, I think that just,
it's a huge gift.
It's just huge.
It is love. It is, you want more and better love. If you're in a relationship where you or your spouse are bringing in children from a previous relationship, loving your partner's children wholeheartedly and embracing their, not just right, but their obligation to love their children and making them feel great about it, making them feel amazing about choosing to love their children and telling them how great they should feel about that, not making them feel guilty. That is a huge, huge thing you can do to strengthen your love.
And I'm going to add also, a big part of that is having those children spend time alone with you as the step parent, right? You got to get to know the child as well. You got to start creating your own relationships. So I've traveled alone with my stepchildren, you know, because I wanted to get to know them. I was on the phone with one of Harold's daughters the other day. I was on the phone for an hour and a half, and afterwards she sent me a text message. She was like, "Thank you so much for spending this time." It's the little things, and I think that's the whole part of love too. People want love to all come overnight. It is the small practices, the consistent practices that create the well of love. And that well is never ending.
Yeah, I agree. You know, I think one opportunity people have, if you're listening in the audience and you are in a blended relationship, one opportunity I think you have to strengthen your love is to tell your spouse good things about their biological children. We tend to sometimes overemphasize the negative. And, you know, if both of you are the parents of the child, it's a little bit more manageable. But you know what? Sometimes if it is your stepchild and what your spouse hears is your kid, or, you know, it's negativity, it's painful and it's really, really hard to get over, and it will impact your love. On the other hand, when you tell your spouse something positive about their biological children, or you tell them how much you love them, or how much you appreciate them, or how well they're doing, it is like shooting a booster shot of love into your relationship. I think it's something anyone in the audience could do today. Say something positive about your stepchild. Yeah. So it's an amazing.
And actually, I wouldn't even, one of the things that Harold is very mindful of, we don't call them stepchildren. We just say our children. That's another, that just solidifies everything. I know we're doing it for the context of this podcast, but in your own relationship, just call them your children.
Absolutely, I love it. So you were raising your son, who, by the way, is your son is an incredible young man who's in law school, and I know how proud you are of him. And he's also a writer and a poet and a thinker. It's just incredible.
Yeah.
You want to plug his website? I know he's what's his website? You know
it's Azzy Coppin at AZI.Coppin, COPPIN.
All right. Well, check that out. He's really things on there. But you were talking about, you know, the Black community and the fact that having a queer child in the Black community can sometimes be a challenge. Talk to me about unique challenges to a strong marriage in the Black community, and how have you and Harold tried to turn this challenge into a strength?
Oh, that's a loaded question, Tal.
You know, we are going to address loaded questions here at Our.Love, because we have to address those questions in order to help people be themselves, be authentic, and experience their best love.
Yeah. So I think I'm very honest with you, and I said this in the beginning because I want to be respectful of my sisters and brothers who are of the same color as me, the Black community, that there are differences within the Black community. And my husband is an African-American Black male, and I am an African Caribbean Black female. So I was born in Barbados. He was born in the United States. And though there are many things that we share, we talk about the disparities between people of color when you have to go buy a house or when you're going for credit and all those things. There are also things that I have had to be respectful and mindful of, because my experience and my journey was very different than his experience and his journey. But one of the things that I think for us as a couple of color is understanding those differences, those cultural differences. He came down to Barbados. He got to know the inner workings of Barbados. I was educated in the United States and in Maryland. So I already kind of knew the whole, the DMV kind of thing, but he had to come down. He had to learn kind of why I do things the way that I do. Why do I process the way that I process? And actually, him taking the time to come down and learn the culture, even the language, the words that we say, and we make fun about it and we have fun about it, just shows that this is a partner who is respectful of where I'm at. And so I, in turn, have to be respectful to his challenges. When he talks about being raised by a single mother, I too was raised by a single mother, and finding the commonality in that. So even though we have different cultures, there's a commonality of being raised by a single mother. Sometimes your parents are so hard out there trying to make ends meet, to make sure that you eat and to put food on your table, that they don't always have the time to say, I love you. I don't even think I heard I love you from my mom till I was probably in my late 30s. Because that's another thing, a disparity. I find that within his family as an African American, they are more I love you based. They have, family functions, they have dinners. In the Caribbean, it's really about that hustle mentality. And a lot of times our parents forget to say, I love you. So even for me, it was a learning curve to soften myself, that I have to let my partner know I love them. And it's just the words that they need to hear sometime. So there are a lot of disparities, that you have to work through within any, I would say, relationship where people are coming from different walks of life. But the biggest thing is to listen, to understand, to immerse yourself into that culture, at least experience it so you can have a healthier understanding of where that person is coming from.
I've spoken to Harold before, and one of the reasons I loved Harold so much when he worked for me years and years ago was what type of a committed father he was. And he spoke to me about his determination that his children would see their father as a person who was invested in his children, and he talked to me about how much he felt that was a need in the Black community. As you see your husband, and Harold is, for those of you who don't know Harold, he's 6 foot something. He's a big man, big strong man. He doesn't necessarily look like the teddy bear that he is. What is the challenge that, being married, to someone like Harold, who is so full of love, but also, a member of a community at large where people are going to reach certain conclusions about him, not knowing him just by his physical demeanor or his size. How does that play? What type of role does it play in your marriage when you know that certain people are judging you or judging your husband strictly based on the color of your skin? How do you deal with that? How do you address that?
One, I think Harold and I have had these conversations, even in me helping him to be more aware of his presence. There's some people who can just walk into a room and say nothing, and they have a presence, and helping him to understand that first interaction and that first, presence for him has to be something that's non-threatening. And I know people in our community will say, oh, it shouldn't matter. And some theories, it shouldn't matter. However, let's deal with reality. The reality is, if someone prepares a great spread of food and it's well organized and it has all the garnishings, you're going to try it, right? But if someone just throws some food on a plate and it looks all messy and sloppy and it's not presenting well, you're not going to want to try it, right? So it's the same thing with how we present, how we show up for the world is what I say. How are you showing up for the world? Are you showing up in a way that people are going to feel threatened by you? They're going to be, and it's more than just how you're dressed. It's how you interact. You walk in, good morning, how you doing? That's one thing about the Caribbean. And that's one thing that he says he likes about the Caribbean. Everyone says, yes, please, and good morning. And Tal, even sometimes with you, you'll rush in and I'll come back and I'll say, good morning. Because it just kind of sets the tone. So helping him to be more mindful of how he shows up for the world. But also me as a woman of color, it's not easy to be a woman of color and to be in business. You have a lot of people who will discredit you because of your skin tone. I am constantly having to deal with situations in the corporate world where other women who are not of color may think that I'm too outspoken or may not like the delivery. And even then, they look at me like, what does she really know? Does she really have that level of expertise? And I've had to get to a point where I've had to let go and let God, as they say, because I feel like you don't have to go and say, hey, look at me, here I am. You don't have to do that. I think that when the time is right and when you have the opportunity and you show up and be your best self, that will speak for itself. So I don't need to tell anyone I'm great.
I love it.
Because in my head, I already know I'm great, but I don't have to tell anyone.
Yeah, I can tell you that, my experience of Harold and Tonya oftentimes is they simply lead by example. I think that is maybe the best advice you can give is, don't let the stereotypes get you down. Don't, we should all work together to try to break down these stereotypes and bring more love to the world, because quite frankly, a big part of what's ailing us as a society is there's not enough love. And love is understanding, love is diversity, love is acceptance. These things are all true, but each of us controls our own behaviors first and foremost. And if we each lead by example, wherever we are in the world, that to me is the best way to bring more love into the world. And I see that out of you and Harold everywhere you go. You're a ray of sunshine and example of positive energy. And I think that's it's a huge credit to both of you.
I think too, Tal, one of the things is you have to be honest and you have to have those hard conversations. I think part of the barrier to really experiencing the best love is to have the uncomfortable conversations. Like if it's in your head and you're not, and if you really care about that person, you're going to have uncomfortable conversations. And you walk away thinking, what did I learn from this exchange? How can I be a better person? How can I respect the other person's viewpoint and thought process? How can I get them to understand and respect my thought process and my viewpoint? But you got to open up the dialogue. I think what's killing us as we look at all of these issues across the board is that we are afraid to really go to the deepest, darkest places and have real, honest conversations, because we might see some.
I think you're right about that, but I keep going back to deep respect and the lack of it, right? In order to be able to have those difficult conversations and uncomfortable conversations, you have to be in a relationship, and we as a society have to become a society where expressing your views can be done safely. You're not worried that when you're going to be mocked, you're going to be yelled at, you're going to be told that your reality is not reality. You have those relationships. If you're in a relationship where your partner is unable to hear your truth without mocking you, without making you think you're crazy, without immediately playing defense as opposed to absorbing your feedback, that's an unhealthy relationship. And you're right. Those difficult conversations have to be had, but first there has to be that total respect.
Yeah. Agree. Totally agree.
Let's shift to something that I know is a huge part of your life. Those of you that are on the inside of Our.Love know that when we have our team calls, and we have a weekly standing Friday morning call where everybody's on board, and for a huge stretch of time, you could count on Tonya she would be out on a walk, she'd be exercising. Health is a really, really important part of your life. It hasn't always been. Can you talk about this quest of yours to improve your health? And do you think this quest has improved your relationship? let's start there. I have a follow-up question.
Well, I'm holding back tears right now because I'm very honest about the journey when it comes to health, because I think that being unhealthy was the unhealthy relationship I was having with myself. And once I realized that, it helped to change my thought process. It's part of that journey. I talk a lot about that, the journey and being honest with yourself. And what was I doing? Why was it okay to eat things and to not exercise, or to say that I'm so tired because I'm working so much and you don't have the time to exercise? Why was I doing that? And, I can say this because, my mom, we go back to the cultural thing, she's already heard this story, so I'm going to just tell you. I remember when I was 8 years old, and, when you're 8, you can be a little chunky or whatever. My mom said to me, you shouldn't wear shorts because your thighs are too fat. She probably didn't think anything of it then. She was just, she just thought that maybe the shorts might have been too short. I don't know. But she said it. And I don't think that the impact she knew would follow me 30 years into the future, right? So for me, the other thing is, I in all honesty, I am a sexual abuse survivor. So I think for me, the weight was a way to not be seen. Excuse me.
No, please take your time.
I knew I was smart, but when you are attacked at a very young age, you start to not trust yourself and not trust your feelings. So for me, weight was that way to kind of box myself in and not be seen. I'm smart. Yes, that's great, but I don't want you to see anything that, my outer appearance. So I used it as a way to kind of protect myself. And as I started down the journey, and part of that is my husband, because I am 120 pounds thinner than I was when I met him. And he loved me 120 pounds heavier than I am now. And when you have that person loving you, in spite of, regardless, you can be your best self for that person. That doesn't mean that I haven't had many suitors. I have, but no one, I think, has loved me the way that he's loved me. So I needed to be my best self for him. For myself, yes, but also I wanted to give him the best version of me as well. And part of that is me being physically fit, being spiritually fit, being emotionally fit, being able to, be there when he needs me. And by that, it starts with me making sure that I could fulfill all aspects of that. So yeah, I go out, I walk, I've done a lot of things to kind of make me a stronger person.
A better
person.
How proud I am of you for that effort. And
sorry, I broke down there for a minute.
I just want you to know that you've inspired a lot of people. I've lost about 30 pounds, and and I think your commitment to better health has made a lot of people around us at Our.Love more committed to better health. And I just want to thank you for that. Thank you for your leadership on that and your candor on that. What advice would you have? We have some listeners that are probably not feeling so great about themselves, or maybe they and their partner have lost sight of health. Everybody's busy and it's been very stressful over the last couple of years. What would be a good first step? What would be your advice for someone that, really does know that they need to do something? What's one thing they can do today to get themselves started? Maybe they and their partner get themselves started towards better health.
It sounds very simple, but take the first step. Go out the house. Just take a walk, 10 minutes. You don't even need to do a whole lot. Take 10 minutes, and the next day do 12, and the next day do 15, and the next day do 20. And as you're doing those walks, talk to yourself. And then as you and your partner join on those walks, talk to each other. Take a moment, leave the cell phone home, leave the kids home, leave work home, just go outside the house, smell the fresh air, look at the trees, look at God's great creation. Use that as a moment of gratitude to say, God, thank you for opening my eyes. Thank you for allowing me to be here. Thank you for giving me presence of mind. Thank you for allowing me to breathe. Thank you for giving me health. Thank you for allowing me to be able to take this walk and take this journey. Thank you for helping me to be on the next steps to being the best me that I can be. Just take a moment and have those thoughts and that conversation with God, the universe, whomever, and just be in the presence. But it's one day at a time. It doesn't start. Everybody wants to go out and do 4 miles the first day. That doesn't create it. It's a little each day, consistently.
Yeah, I love that. I think it's such beautiful advice, and I would add to that we are our own worst critics. We, on a daily basis, say way more negative things to ourselves and about our community or environment or our spouse. Positivity starts from within. We need to be much more gentle with ourselves. And I would urge anyone that's listening to take that walk that Tonya suggested. And if at first it's 5 minutes, that's okay. If that's all you can do. 5 minutes is better than zero. And if for a week all you can do is 5 minutes, then that's fine. Do not be critical of your effort to get healthy. Do not judge yourself in any way other than loving yourself and giving yourself some credit for starting. We need to be a lot more positive with ourselves. More positive self-talk is a really important part of loving ourselves and our partners more and better. So practicing self-love, actively, mindfully practicing self-love is actually an act of love towards not just yourself, but also your significant other, your children, your neighbors, your community, and the world. So I know, Tonya, you and I both feel very strongly about that. So a last question, and I'm just going to end with something a little funny. But as you joined me on this journey. You were first. This was before this was a real company. You saw a rickety PowerPoint presentation that I pulled together, and yet you saw the potential value and potential opportunity. We've since added a small army of really incredible people. But what is it about this journey, Our.Love? What is it about this vision that inspired you to say, you know what? Yeah, I'm running a very successful startup in global RNS, multi-million-dollar company. You've got hundreds of employees. You're all over the world traveling, speaking. You're working on your PhD. You're an associate professor. My goodness, Tonya. But you decided to dive into this. Why? What was it about this mission of Our.Love that made you feel, yeah, I'm adding that to the long list of things that I do. And not only am I adding it, I'm going to devote a considerable amount of time, attention, and money to this journey. Why?
Because you know me, Tal. First of all, that initial PowerPoint was not a little rickety PowerPoint. It was 60-something pages long. Okay, so let's not fool the audience here. Okay,
it wasn't as good as the current. I'm just
Okay, right. Okay, yeah. It's come a long way. It's been on a journey.
That's right.
But I think for me, as I said, if tomorrow's my last day on Earth, or today is my last day on Earth, how do I want to be remembered? And I want to be remembered as someone who contributed something to greater mankind, something that is going to live on and exist long after I'm gone. And that's the legacy. And so when you first came to me and I thought about the concept of love and loving more and helping people to love more and better, I thought to myself, this is the gift that keeps on giving, because you'll never deplete it. It'll never end. You'll never run out of it. And again, it's like the air that you breathe. It's just, it's a multitude. So I think that air and love go hand in hand. It's endless. And if we can learn to love more and better, then a lot of things, a lot of challenges that we face, we can overcome them. We can come through them. We can be better after the process, but we got to be willing to take the journey. And when you know that love is there and love is never going to end, it makes you more willing to go through that journey. So when you came to me, I was like, yes, I want to be part of this project. Sign me up. I am here, and the sky's the limit, and we can do so many things. So I'm actually happy that you considered me as one of the first to actually pitch this idea to.
Yeah, well, that's a great answer. And, you and I often talk about love as a resource, and it is a resource. It's energy. Love is energy, and energy is a resource. And generally, when we think of resources, we think of them as finite, right? Resources end, right? There's only so much fossil fuel in the earth. But love happens to be this rare resource that is infinite. And not only is it infinite, it's one of these rare resources where you can have as much of it as you can possibly grab, but so can your neighbor. And, there's no carbon footprint or frankly any other footprint to love. So last question, I just maybe want to end on a bit of a humorous note. You and I spent some time in Atlanta, and you have a very good friend who is a celebrity. She was on the Housewives of Atlanta, and she opened a club. You invited me to that club. We went to that club, and you are extremely comfortable rubbing elbows with celebrities. In that club, I met some real big time celebrities, and yet we were also intermingling with everyday people. What is it that makes you so comfortable, rubbing elbows with the celebrities that you rub elbows with? You're also the president of a nonprofit with your friend. Talk about that. Talk about what is it that makes you so comfortable in just about any situation? Because I've experienced you as absolutely yourself and in the zone, no matter whether it's in a club, in a boardroom, with people you've met, with people you haven't, people of the same culture, people of different culture. You always seem comfortable. What is that? What is the source of that comfort?
I think we all come from the same place. We all have similar fears. We have similar things that drive us. We have, common goals. And I think we have to, when you meet a person, people always start as, oh, this person is different from me, or this person doesn't look the way, or doesn't talk the way that I talk, or doesn't dress the way, instead of saying, what are the commonalities that me and this person have? So for me, I start out at zero. I'm a human, you're a human. So if I'm a human, I know the things I do, you do on some level. You may not do it exactly the way I do it, but we do, there's some similarities. So I just lead with that. I don't put on any pretenses. I don't put on any airs. And listen, you're not going to be everyone's cup of tea. And people have to get to that place in their head where they understand you're not going to be for everyone. But those people who love you, they're going to love you. And those people who you're not their cup of tea, it's okay. They'll move on to the people who they find a better connectivity with. And that doesn't mean anything against you, right? I have a friend that says what other people think about me is not my problem. It's their problem, right? So you just have to, in your mind, always think, okay, look, I'm being the best version of me. As long as you're not doing anything reckless or disrespectful or harmful, you have to be comfortable with who you are. And celebrities, they're human beings too. And many times they prefer people who are respectful, people who understand that they don't want to be the celebrity always on display. They just need some human interaction. And I'll tell you this about my celebrity friend. We had a little text exchange yesterday. So she said to me, and I don't know if you might want to edit this one out. She says to me, hey, I got to go get a procedure done. I said, well, I'm going for mine next week. And she said, yeah, well, I got to get mine the week after. I said, ouch. I said, I'm not looking forward to the surgery, but I am looking forward to the painkillers. Okay, that was my funny.
We may have to edit that out. But anyway,
edit that one out.
On a final note, I just want to say that, it's such a privilege to work with someone like Tonya. I love that we both come at working with each other and with our team from a place of curiosity. I think it's crucial when you're trying to live life, but certainly start a company or run a company, to understand that the best outcomes are often a combination of the thinking and experiences and lifestyles and backgrounds and cultures of multiple people. And if you approach it from a place of curiosity and love, it's amazing what type of outcomes are possible. So on that note, Leigh, I'm going to thank our audience for listening. I'm going to thank Tonya for being such a wonderful guest and such a great partner and a good friend. And it's been a pleasure. I hope you enjoyed this podcast and that you join us again. We're going to continue to bring you what we hope is a series of interesting conversations about love and about people's experience with love from all walks of life. And on that note, thank you so much.
Thanks for listening to Our Love podcast. We hope you enjoyed today's topic. Please be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes and give us a 5-star rating to help others find us. We'll see you again next week, and we hope that you are experiencing your best love today.